Good evening. I'm Anali Chakraborty. Welcome to our today's session on behalf of Modak Trainer Academy. Today's topic of discussion is Modern Indian Development Political Aspect. Distinguished guest speaker of this topic is Professor Dipika Majumdar. She joined Muralidhar Girls College as a lecturer of political science in 1974, became associate professor in 1987 and retired in 2006. After retirement, she worked as a part-time professor in Maulana Azad College and Bashanti Devi College. Afterwards, she joined Sikkim Skill University as research supervisor of political science. Three students received PhD under her supervision. Five students are currently doing PhD under her supervision. She has written many research-oriented books and textbooks of graduate and postgraduate level. She has contributed many articles in important journals such as CLIO and the Socialist Perspective and work as an editor at some journals as well. She has been delivered lectures in several national and international seminars, including at the Council for Political Studies. So we are blessed to having her here with us. Now I request to Professor Majumdar, Madam, please start your deliberation.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So my topic for today is modern Indian development, political aspect, or modern Indian political development. So at the beginning, I think that we must be clear about the two concepts, modern India and political development. Modern India, actually, if we start from ancient India, since ancient India, India has been one of the largest countries of the world with a very old and traditional standard of civilization that developed more than 4,000, 5,000 years ago in the Indus and Gangetic Valley. Since 1500 BC, a number of invasions took place on India by Anglo-Aryan people, Arabs, Turk Afghans, etc. And finally, India was conquered by British power in 1757 when concepts of secularism, science, technology, development, etc. reached India through its British rulers. And the Indian society experienced slow changes and an awakening about its own identity. It is an awakening about modernity, but I would start my discussion on modern India from 1947, when India achieved political independence from British rule and could proceed on the path of development in the way it liked and could solve the problems faced by the Indian people, Indian society, and Indian government in the way it liked and in the direction chosen by itself. The day when India started as an independent state, it had Western Pakistan and Afghanistan in the northeast and East Pakistan in the northeast. Afghanistan, Pakistan northwest, and East Pakistan in northeast, which later turned into Bangladesh. This northeast part. It had Nepal, China, and Tibet in the north, and Sri Lanka in the south. It was surrounded by seas on three sides: Bay of Bengal, southeast, Arabian Sea, southwest, and Indian Ocean, south. India's border with its neighboring states was ill-defined. Some areas bordering Nepal, Bangladesh are in dispute. There are problems of deciding border with Pakistan and confusion with Tibet, Sri Lanka, and China also. This is the geographical picture of modern India, starting of modern India as an independent state in 1947. So now we would enter the topic political development. Now I'm not going into details. Shortly, as stated by Almond, Lipset, Coleman, Rasto, etc., political development signifies democracy, representative government, stability, social modernization, peaceful changes, moderate changes, secularism, dependence on the constitution and rule of law, and a sort of market economy blend, blended with state regulation and a vibrant civil society. These are all connected with the concept of democracy. So, the story of the journey to political development and to modern India is I'm starting now. By the time India achieved independence, liberal thought had become a strong and unchallenged tradition in Indian political life under British rule. Naturally, the first Indian government entrusted with the task of building up modern India accepted liberal democratic principles as at the beginning. To create the political structure of the country, a new constitution was written, which came into force in 1950. It stated that India is a sovereign and democratic state and adopted parliamentary democracy on the British model and declared India as a republic, its people being the source of its political power. The Constitution laid down in its preamble justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, democracy, and secularism and socialism were added later on. The Constitution introduced universal adult suffrage and granted the right to vote to all its citizens, irrespective of sex, caste, race, etc., at the age of 21, and it was later reduced to 18. It granted the fundamental rights to freedom, equality, religion, right against exploitation, right to property, educational and cultural rights, and the right to constitutional remedies. Later on, the right to property was turned into a legal right, not as constitutional right, as the government wanted to abolish the zamindari system. The constitution also set up a federal structure for India, a central government for the administration of the whole of India, and also a few state governments for the state level administrative works. National level elections and also state level elections are held every 5 years unless the parliament is dissolved earlier or the tenure of the parliament is extended during emergency. Indian Parliament Central has two houses, Lok Sabha with 45 members and Rajya Sabha with 250 members. Members of Lok Sabha are elected by the citizens of India, one representative from each territorial constituency. 230 members of Rajya Sabha, 230, 18 are actually 12 are nominated by the president, and the rest of the 250 are actually elected by the state legislatures. Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha has 5-year term. Rajya Sabha is not reserved, but 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years, and every member is elected for 6 years. Most of the important legislative activities, no confidence motion against the cabinet, passing of budget, etc., are performed by the Lok Sabha. And the two houses together pass ordinary laws, amend the constitution, elect the vice president. They both also elect the president together with the state legislatures. They can pass impeachment motions against the president, vice president, important office bearers like the Supreme Court and High Court judges, CAG, Controller and Auditor General, Election Commissioner, etc. The executive head of India is the president, in whom all executive powers are vested. But he is the nominal head, and the real executive head is the prime minister, who carries on the real work of the government with his cabinet ministers. After the national election, the president appoints the leader of the largest party in the Lok Sabha as the PM. The PM chooses his cabinet and other ministers from his own party or coalition partners. All ministers are responsible to the Lok Sabha, both individually and collectively. If a vote of no confidence is passed against the ministry or any one of the ministers, then all the ministers have to resign collectively. The president can, on the advice of the PM, Prime Minister, order new elections for the Lok Sabha before the expiry of its 5-year term. He can proclaim 3 types of emergency in the whole of India or any one or more states. National emergency, constitutional failure, financial emergency. So this is all about Indian executive as written in the constitution. Then the Supreme Court is the highest court of India. It protects fundamental rights of the citizens, decides cases of disputes between state governments and also between a state or more states or between a state and the central government. It is the guarantor of the Constitution of India. India has accepted the unified system of judiciary under which the Supreme Court is placed at the apex of the judicial system, and under it comes state or district courts. This is not so in America, where we do not have unified judicial system. All are different there. In states also, the parliamentary system of democracy is in vogue. Like the president at the central level, the governor is the nominal head of the state. He is appointed by the president on the advice of the central government. After the election, the governor appoints the leader of the largest party of the lower house of the state of the state legislature as its CM. The CM appoints the other ministers of the cabinet on or other ministers, and from his own party or coalition partners. And all the ministers are here also individually and collectively responsible to the lower house of the state legislature. The governor can send reports to the president on the administration of the state, and if he reports that the state government cannot be run according to law, then the president can declare emergency in that state, which is called failure of constitutional emergency. States have their own legislatures. Some have only one house, Vidhan Sabha, and some consist of 2 houses, Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Porishad. Vidhan Sabha members are elected by the citizens every 5 years unless the government is dissolved earlier or has an extended term because of emergency. High courts are the highest courts of the states, and under them, under the high courts, function the district courts and the lower courts. Now, this is the structure of the executive, legislative, and judicial system of India as written in the Constitution. The Constitution prescribed a welfare state for India and accepted the principle to provide social service to the people in its directive principles. Article 38 says the state shall strive to promote welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, political, and economic shall prevail in all the spheres of life and all the institutions of the state. This principle of welfare state implies a social order based on the capitalist mode of production. Indian capitalist class was then too weak to undertake by itself and without any help from the government the task of the development of the Indian economy. The adoption of mixed economy, a private sector, together with the state-owned public sector, was the final choice. Resolutions of 1948 and 1956 of the Congress government stated in clear terms that economic development of India would proceed on the principles of a mixed economy. In 1954, socialist pattern of society was declared to be the goal of economic policy by the Indian Parliament. A.H. Hansen wrote in his book, Public Enterprise, he wrote, although the Congress Party is now officially committed to a socialist pattern of economics, this policy implies welfare economics rather than nationalization of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. So we have a socialist economy, which is actually a welfare economy. Since independence, the government of India had been trying to bring about desired changes through planned efforts. 5-year plans were launched in the 50s to raise the standard of living of the people, to reduce inequality of income and wealth, and open also opportunities for a richer and more varied life in India. Through effective utilization of human and material resources available in the community. Successive 5-year plans aimed primarily not only economic development but drastic social changes also in the social structure of India. Community development projects were also undertaken with the same objectives. In the social area, the government sought to provide free and compulsory education to children up to 14 years, to start new primary schools, to improve the standard of secondary and university education, and to open opportunities for vocational education. Various laws were promulgated to ensure equality of sexes, to abolish untouchability, etc. So what we find in our story for the first time is that the tools of parliamentary democracy, constitutional arrangements, mixed economy, planning, community development projects, effective educational opportunities, and building up of infrastructure for that, reformative laws, etc., were expected to transform backward feudal and colonial India into a modern, prosperous, and powerful India. In the last 77 years, 47 to 24, 1924, the country has won great achievements in India are remarkable in the following fields. Number one, rehabilitation of refugees from Pakistan and Bangladesh. Integration, number two, integration of the so-called native or formerly princely states into the map of India. And number three, some increase in national income and per capita income also. Number four, what happened? Constitutional abolition of untouchability. Number five, free compulsory education up to 14 years of age. Number six, advancement in the social and legal position of women and other downtrodden sections. Number seven, industrialization and modernization drive by the government. Number eight, green revolution hastened by the use of science and technology and the increased use of high quality food grains, pesticides, fertilizers, etc. Number nine, there has been successful resistance to Chinese aggression in 1962 and Pakistan war in 1965 and 1971. We must mention here also one event which is not very far away, not old. After the Pulwama attack by Jaish-e-Mohammed on February 14, 2019 on Indian security people on the national highway of Jammu and Kashmir, and the death of 48 Indian Jawans, India retaliated by Uri surgical strike on September 2019. It destroyed Pak terror camps and killed many Pakistani terrorists, amounting to almost 38. Then number 10, successive elections, both central and state levels, were executed, and these elections place our democracy on a strong foothold. Election Commission deserves special praise for its monumental patience when it keeps its cool, follows election laws, delivers the mandate of the people, maintaining confidentiality, fairness, and freedom. Now, the legislators of India, number 11, have given us necessary constitutional amendments and several new laws which have changed India's life rhythm. For example, reservation of seats in the legislature for SC and ST, scheduled caste and tribes, food security bill, triple talaq abolition bill, abolition of Article 370 and 35A, etc. Then number 12, foreign policy of non-alignment of India has added to India's prestige in the international community. On a visit to India, the US President assured Indian leaders of its support to the Indian claim of a seat in the Security Council in the UNO. But due to Chinese veto, this could not become a reality. Then number 13, India sent spacecraft to the Mars, which is known as Mars Orbitation Mission or Mongolian. And this happened on 5th November 2013. Then Indian spacecraft was expected to launch on the moon on September 5, 2019. But when it was 2.1 kilometer away from the lunar surface, contact with the spacecraft was lost. And after the failure of this, a new mission was undertaken, and this became a success. And 14, and this is, I am now mentioning this is as the last because I cannot increase the numbers. I have many other things to say. India achieved nuclear power status in the international community. So despite these remarkable achievements, there are some loopholes, some crises as reflected in various aspects of our economy. So I would actually deal these features into separate heads. Number one, economic. Under economic heads, I would like to emphasize infrastructure of industrial production has been set up, but the control over state and industry were concentrated within a few families, leading to centralization of industrial ownership. Then number two, problem of securing sufficient finance for development expenditure of India. This was a problem. So the government had to depend on foreign aid and foreign capital. Thus, huge amount of money is drained away for payment of interest and repayment of foreign loans from the beginning. Number three, unbalanced growth of the different sections of the economy happened in India as foreign investors or loan providers select those aspects of the economy which would give them maximum profit. Planning did not put the right emphasis on different sectors of the economy. And so what happened is a lopsided development. Some sites were actually very improved and developed, some were not. Infiltration of MNCs in the economy. This happened in different aspects of the economy. And finally, this entry of MNCs gave rise to concentration of economic power, and they actually created some menace to our democracy. The next 5-year plans and community development projects were not successful. And this resulted in an unbalanced growth of the economy, and total development could not be expected. There has also been successful green revolution, but its benefits went to the land-owning aristocracy, not to the ordinary peasants, whose life are still poor and very difficult to live. There has been increase in national income and per capita income, but there has also been inequality of wealth and income among the people. So this is the economic situation of India. Now, I would like to start with the social aspect. Economic aspect first, and then social aspect. There has been an overall growth of national income, and we actually started giving emphasis on education, because education is a vital prerequisite for growth and progress of a country. Demands for education has been growing since independence, but the progress made in this respect during the last 77 years is not satisfactory. The number of educational institutions has not increased sufficiently enough to meet the growing demand for education. Infrastructure for education is also not very high. Education is a very costly and prolonged process, and the benefits of educational facilities actually are distributed disproportionately to the upper sections of the people. Higher education and higher posts are a monopoly of these people. The lower middle class and some members of the lower classes are also getting educated, but they could not be provided sufficient jobs. Among the poorer sections, there are people who think that it is profitable to employ the child in any kind of work or to keep the child at home to assist them in their work. They either do not send their children to school or withdraw them from school after a few years. There has been an increase in the academic type of education, increasing institutes and learning centers for MBA, engineering, technical aspects, medical, etc., since independence. But increased number of such educational institutions added the unemployment problem of the youth. We have failed to provide elementary education even after so many years of independence. It is ignorance and illiteracy of the vast majority of the people which lie at the root of the presence of superstition, black magic, etc., and standing in the way of a modern India. Despite constitutional guarantees of equality before law, there remains even today inequality based on sex. Discrimination against women is manifest in the practice of paying lower wages to women than men for the same work. True, the status of women improved a lot since independence. There has been an increase in the number of educated women. A rising number of women are working in secretarial or administrative posts in schools, colleges, courts, hospitals, political and administrative fields, etc. But there has not been any significant change in the social outlook towards women. Dowry system has not disappeared from the society. Even today, brides' parents have to pay a huge sum of money or give a portion of the property for the marriage of the girls. Parents unable to meet the demand of dowry are humiliated, and the extreme result has been, in some cases, the burning or killing of the bride. Women, though situated in the same position as men, are utterly powerless, and there is a male pressure to place them in the position inferior to men. We can look at the picture, two pictures, film line, where actors are paid more money than the actresses. And if we go to the cricket sphere, Indian captain, 1 crore 50 lakhs, 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 1 crore 50 the name modern Indian captain Virat Kohli, and the women team captain Jhulan Goswami, there's a huge gap, though their work is the same. So this is not the end. There has been rape cases, and there was a reaction in Me Too movement. But despite all these, women folk still are regarded as inferior and have to suffer lots of sufferings. Now, if we come to the caste scene, Constitution has guaranteed caste equality, but despite those guarantees, caste hierarchy and caste sentiments are persisting even today. In the rural areas, a few upper caste people occupy higher status in the social and economic life, while a great majority of the people belonging especially to scheduled castes and tribes occupy the lower strata. And in the cities, we find different picture. Caste feeling is expressed in caste journals, caste organizations, caste panchayats, etc. They are springing up to voice the demands of different castes. A competition between caste and caste to improve the status of the caste is a widespread movement, and numerous castes are trying to reform themselves by adapting the practices of the higher castes. Castes are also acting as interest groups in the political.
Madam, unmute your device.
But conflicts are frequent between dominant castes for political power in many states. Progress of science have diminished the superstitions and theological sanctions of casteism, but it has its head again under political garb. We find the importance of caste in election times, and the present election in 24 is not an exception. Caste feelings are still prevalent in India during election times. The provisions of safeguards for scheduled castes and tribes were misused by many, and there was an attempt to stick to the stigma of backwardness in order to secure education, especially technical and medical education, and highly ranked administrative posts or well-paid government jobs. So, casteism is continuing in the name of safeguards of the scheduled castes and tribes. Whatever progress were made during the last few years was arrested by population increase at a greater ratio. We had been second to China. China was first, and we had been second in world population, and we are surpassing China. Massive family planning programs were undertaken to reduce the birth rate, but it is again ignorance of the people and low literacy rate which are responsible for the failure of these programs. Now, ecology is being seriously threatened in India. 70% of water in the lakes, rivers, and streams are polluted. There is air pollution too. Problem of child labor is alarming in India. A huge number of children below the age of 14 are seen every day in different places, washing dirty dishes, cleaning tables, lifting heavy weight in factories, etc. So this is our picture of social side. Now we have to come to another aspect. Economic and social aspects were done. Now there are also some other aspects of corruption which we may list under political, which may also list under social heading. Instances of corruption, dishonesty, degradation among MLAs, MPs, ministers, and bureaucrats are rampant. Every day we are seeing them in the newspapers. In West Bengal also we are finding such cases. Those happened many times ago in many states, in Delhi also. So corruption is another problem facing India. Narcotics and illegal arms trade is also actually very high in India. Insurgency and terrorism in different parts of India are creating menace to Indian security. So if you bring them under social heads, then we may start the political side. And what is democracy? Democracy means rule by the people. Whatever the government is doing, there is consent of the people behind that. But what we find today is executive dictatorship. And the legislature's role is only to validate executive decisions. The executive members know that they are a majority in the parliament, and they know that we can do whatever we like because of this majority. So the legislatures, or the members of the legislature, they cannot actually protest even if they think that is just against anything against the government. So emergency provisions of the Constitution has also been misused frequently. There are provisions of MISA, ESMA, ESMA, which are actually needed for security. But they had been misused to curtail the freedom of the individuals and also of the groups. People have no role in policy decisions. Policy decisions are only a monopoly of the elite group of the government. People have only the right to vote, then they have to be silent. Muscle power and money power are also controlling politics nowadays. So the political side is having a very dark picture. Now, if we come to the legislature especially, role of the opposition in the legislature is not constructive, but destructive. Sessions of parliament are not allowed to take place. Walkouts, demonstrations, unruling behavior by the members of parliament in parliament is actually seen often. Lawmaking is now an activity of the executive department and not the legislature. Arrangements of punishment of politicians violating the norms are there, but it is very difficult to punish them. there are some problems in the functioning of our democracy also. Who becomes the government? The party which got majority in the legislature. Now what happens? Sometimes the ruling party with less than 50% of the electoral votes become the ministers, take decisions on behalf of the majority. Less than 50. Say there are three candidates, 40, 30, 5. Who is the majority? The 40 votes. So the party getting 40 votes and others getting 60 votes against that party. Which is majority? 60 votes, but the voice of the party getting 40 does prevail. Now, specific mandate from the electorate for socio-economic and political changes are required in a democracy, but that is not found in India. Agreement among political parties is required for the maintenance of the democratic structure, but that is not found in India. Conflict between the civil society and the government on many times actually endanger our freedom. Especially, we can remember the conflict between Anna Hazare and the government over Jano Lokpal bill, and also recent demonstration by agricultural laborers and the government confronting them. So these are actually different kinds of conflicts and between the civil society and the government, and these are damaging our development and our modernity also. Then there is judicial activism. Judicial activism, this is a blessing for India because judges decide cases of corruption, of illegal work by the government or by the ministers. So, right, he said that the judges infuse life and blood into the dry skeleton provided by the legislature and creates a living organism appropriate and adequate to meet the demands of the society. It is a symbol of hope for Indian people. It is the judiciary ruling on laws suspected of being based on personal and political considerations rather than on existing laws. So, judicial activism is also an important part of Indian democracy today. So, some moments or doubts about the survival of Indian democracy was witnessed three times, especially I can mention three times. 1960, ethnic and caste conflicts, it was rampant. 1970, and it was emergency declaration for 1.5 years. And then 1990, breakdown of the mosque in Ajodhya. These three were actually problems of Indian democracy, and survival of Indian democracy was actually very much in question. So what we find that despite all these problems, there are some rays of hope. Peaceful transfer of power has been possible between rival political parties, both at the center and at state levels. Indian press is mostly free. election commission is functioning impartially, and we have already said that the judiciary has seen that the basic structure of Indian parliamentary democracy is kept intact. Arrangements of punishment of politicians violating democratic norms actually by the electorate is there, and also by the judiciary is also there. Now, federal structure of our country, it had also it for total India, because the problems remain confined within local areas and they do not affect the whole country. The problems do not spread into other areas. So we are actually safe because of our federal structure. Now we have to know finally where we are. We are at a juncture and we have accepted parliamentary democracy on the Western model. We are moving towards development, though with some problems. And what we need is to revive the traditional Indian values of tolerance, truth, integrity, etc. There is a strong message of unity in Indian civilization. And so what I think is that our parliamentary democracy on the Western model should be erected on the basis of a synthesis of Western patterns and Indian norms. We should not forget the messages of great men of India like Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Vivekananda, Rabindranath Tagore, etc. So I conclude with the words of Shils, Shils. He used the words a slumbering existence for Indian democracy. And Myrdal, Myrdal, found too many soft spots in our system, seriously affecting its performance. These hold good even today. So we have development, we have problems, we are continuing. And what we see that in our neighboring states, they could not continue on democratic lines, but we are still continuing democracy and elections are taking place. So let us be hopeful about the future of India. Thank you.